So the question you might be asking, okay, why should I be listening to this? And the answer to that question is the same as the answer to the second question, which is why PacketZoom exists. I have already given you a little bit of background on that. But why is that even important? Why should we even care about what happens to mobile? Well, because we know that mobile has won. Mobile is the computer for most of the world today. Mobile is going to be the only computer which most of the world will ever see. Right now, there are perhaps 1 billion or 1.5 billion devices in the world. There are still 4 or 5 billion more people who haven't seen internet, haven't seen any computer in their life, and probably the only internet connection they will ever use is going to be a mobile internet connection. So clearly, it's a very, very serious problem, and every effort you can put to make that experience better is worth it. So I was going to, I actually gave you some stats, but there are so many other stats. Facebook sees now majority of its traffic, Google sees majority of its search traffic coming from mobile. Everybody agrees here. I'm sure this crowd understands why mobile has won. So I don't have to go into. But there is one thing that that is slightly more specific than that. Not only has mobile won, mobile apps have won. So native apps on mobile are now 90% of the time spent. 90%. Remember when some of you guys may be too young, but remember when iPhone first came out? Steve Jobs said all the apps that you need will be in Safari. How many people remember that? You guys are all too young.
You are too.
I do remember this. Yeah, I'm very, very young. So, let me remind you that when iPhone first came out, that was the first real smartphone that you would use with a touch screen. There was no app store. There were no native apps. The only native apps were the Apple native apps, and that is all there was. And developers immediately wanted to access the APIs of the device and create apps. Steve Jobs said no, because I have given you this beautiful browser and you will write JavaScript app in there. So at that time, 100% of the mobile time spent was either on Apple apps or the browser. But very quickly, the device was jailbroken. How many remember that? Yeah. Jailbroken apps were the first apps. That just shows you how eager developers were to write apps for that platform. So, of course, Jobs learned from that, and there was the App Store a year later. So now, native apps is all that people pretty much use. So, therefore, you can actually get rid of the web, or at least do something very special for native apps that is not held back by the legacy of the web. But unfortunately, what's happening is that that's exactly what each and every one in this room is doing. You guys are all writing REST APIs with host and get, and getting all your data over HTTP or HTTPS, even worse. And every single server-side app has only one visible API, which is an HTTP API, pretty much, right? So we have kind of got into that. We kind of backed into this situation without really thinking, or there was no time for thinking, because there was so much money to be made in writing those apps, right? And we had our servers which were serving out our web content, so we just kept using those servers. But today, 90% of the usage on mobile is in native apps. So why are we stuck in that legacy? So it's a little bit right here. Can everybody read this clearly? Okay, so problems, why we should not be using the technology that was invented in 1973 for fixed connections and fixed IP addresses. You had people wiring 3-pin plugs, or even before that, if you remember those taps. Okay. So we were actually hard wiring with a screwdriver wires into mainframes, and the other end of the mainframe was another mainframe with another hardwired connection. That's what these protocols were designed for. we're still using them in 2015, almost 16. Okay, so when the web came along, you could excuse, because in the 1990s, not so many people were using the internet yet. So, of course, TCP was the most ideal choice for that, and we wrote HTTP on top of that for the web purposes. And that was still the not mainframes this time, but PCs hardwired to other PCs. Essentially, that's what the structure of the internet was. And a lot of the assumptions that were built into how TCP was designed, how HTTP was designed, was based on those conditions from 1993.